Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. Welcome to not Guess the Banzuke and not Banzuke Breakdown, but something a little off to the side from both. A little while back, we released a pair of videos titled Learn the Banzuke, which broke down how the math works for figuring out how wrestlers move in the rankings from one tournament to the next. The second of those videos looked at a particularly messy example, where the Kyushu 2019 Basho led into a Banzuke for Hatsu 2020 that had a pretty disastrous pileup of guys in the middle that needed to be sorted out. 3 years later, we have a worse situation. Significantly worse, most likely. And that's where the title of this video came from. Why you're going to hate the next Banzuke. Now, if you felt like the all caps hate in the title was a little clickbaity, let me try to alleviate things by answering the question already posed, which is, why are you going to hate the next Banzuke? The short answer is that your favorite wrestler is almost certainly getting screwed. The long answer is this video. The reason you're not likely to be happy with how your favorite wrestler is treated on the next Banzuke mainly revolves around expectations. Remember, on a baseline level, we expect wrestlers to move a number of ranks equivalent to the number of wins they had in the last Basho minus the number of losses. Positive numbers go up, so someone 9 and 6 should rise 3 ranks, negative numbers go down, so someone 6 and 9 should go down 3. But it's pretty common for someone to not move exactly the number of ranks we expect. Let's say we expect our favorite wrestler to go up 3 ranks. If he goes up 4, he's been over-promoted, and that's great, we're happy. That's a positive outcome. If he only goes up 2, he's been under-promoted, and we feel like he hasn't gotten his due, a relatively negative outcome. Likewise, if we expect our guy to go down 3 ranks, we're at least happy-ish if he only goes down 2 since he got a relatively positive outcome, he's been under-demoted. But if he goes down 4, he's been over-demoted, and that can feel like pure robbery, a negative outcome. Being human, we're usually more pissed off if our favorite wrestler winds up below where we expect him to be than we are happy if he's above where we expect. We're far more likely to treat negative outcomes as unfair and positive outcomes as fair, even though the positive outcomes may simply be unfair in a way that we like because they feel more correct. If you've been around the sport for a while, you've probably noticed that wrestlers tend to have better than expected outcomes more than the reverse. In other words, more positive than negative outcomes. For a newer fan, that might seem strange. How can these things not balance out in the long run if every match has a winner and a loser? There are reasons which we'll get into, but the immediate upshot is this. Not only are people worse about dealing with negative outcomes than positive ones, but a large proportion of sumo fans have gotten used to seeing more positive outcomes than negative ones to the point that those positive outcomes probably seem normal. That's only going to make it feel worse when everything goes sideways. To understand why the upcoming Banzuke will be such a mess, we first need to cover the factors that impact overall movement. From there, we can understand why there's been a traditional tendency towards better than expected outcomes and why that tendency has not only been completely thrown on its head for the upcoming Banzuke, but the reasons the tendency has been fading overall in the last few years. Alright, the factors. They are unusable promotion and demotion ranks, Kyujo losses below Ozeki, a change in the size of the sanyaku, and retirements in Maegashira. The first factor is most common since it impacts every Banzuke. It's pretty straightforward. Every wrestler with a winning record earns promotion ranks, and every wrestler with a losing record earns demotion ranks. Overall, if all 42 top division wrestlers fight all 15 days of a Basho, they'll combine for 315 wins and 315 losses. In terms of promotion ranks earned, the division is perfectly even. However, some guys can't actually use the ranks they earn. Yokozuna and Ozeki are the most obvious examples. When Terunofuji wiped out everyone in November 2021 and went 15-0, the fact he was Yokozuna and couldn't go anywhere on the Banzuke doesn't change the fact he earned 15 ranks of promotion. They just went unused. This is important because every time someone from those top ranks wins, someone else is still losing. When a Yokozuna or Ozeki has a strong record, they absorb a lot of promotion ranks from the division overall that go unused. That means, barring other factors, that we'll see more losing records and more demotion ranks in the rest of the division, which pushes more wrestlers down when we initially calculate where they should go on the next Banzuke. However, this leaves gaps that require pushing wrestlers up from wherever they land in those initial calculations, meaning more over promotions and under demotions, the positive outcomes that we like to see. I should lay out an important note here. I'm gonna talk a lot about promotion and demotion ranks. If you feel a little lost, just remember this. The outcomes we generally consider positive, when guys are over-promoted or under-demoted, happen when more promotion ranks are absorbed or unused. So, if I talk about that, or something being comparable to that, just remember that promotion ranks being absorbed is good. Demotion ranks being absorbed is bad because that leads to wrestlers not receiving their expected promotions or being demoted too far. To understand exactly how promotion ranks being absorbed or unused works, it's easiest to visualize this with a more artificial example. Say it's the year 2834, there's been an apocalypse, and only 16 people are left doing sumo. As it turns out, we have 2 yokozuna, 2 ozeki, 2 sekiwake, 2 komusubi, and then 8 more in Maegashira. The yokozuna East goes 15-0, yokozuna West is 11-4. Both ozeki go 9-6, and the 2 sekiwake are both 8-7. Then, miraculously, the 2 komusubi and all 8 Maegashira finish exactly 6-9. If you add up the wins and losses, you'll see everyone combines for 120 wins and 120 losses. However, all the winning records went to wrestlers who are unable to be promoted. The yokozuna and ozeki have nowhere to go, and no matter how the sekiwake have been doing, they won't be promoted with 8 wins. Everyone still at a rank that can be promoted solely thanks to a win-loss record has a losing record. That leaves us with this scenario. Mathematically, everyone here drops 3 ranks. However, all the promotion ranks in the division go unused. No one else can take the ranks the ones who lost just vacated, so they get moved back up. We expected them to fall 3 ranks, but they wound up not falling, so they were all under-demoted by 3 ranks. And this situation, which consists purely of what I'm referring to as positive outcomes, is possible because of all the winning records amongst the wrestlers who couldn't take advantage of the promotion ranks they earned. The same thing can happen with demotion ranks. This is possible with yokozuna and ozeki. If a sekiwake has a losing record, they just get demoted, so we don't count them here. Let's use the same apocalypse sumo scenario, but change the numbers. Here we see the 2 yokozuna each were matched up the first day but took few sin losses, then went Kyujo. Because someone else got a win on the day they withdrew, those losses count. However, since a yokozuna can't drop rank, the Kyujo losses effectively don't exist, so we can think of each yokozuna as 0-1 for the basho. Each sekiwake finishes 8-7 again, but each ozeki forgets how sumo works and finishes 0-15. The yokozuna and sekiwake balance each other out, and the ozeki absorb 30 demotion ranks, so overall that's 30 demotion ranks taken out of the system. This, as you may be figuring out, lands us in the opposite situation from last time. Just as miraculously as in that example, the komusubi and all 8 Maegashira finished 9-6. We expect them to each be promoted 3 ranks, but there's nowhere for any of them to go, and the Sumo Association is as averse to opening a new sekiwake slot for someone who's 9-6 as they were 800 years ago, so instead they end up back where they were, under-promoted by 3 ranks. And, if you can imagine all this, you might see how the first example could leave everyone feeling relieved, lucky, basically positive, but how getting no promotion with a 9-6 record might incite a rage fest. Demotion ranks can also be absorbed by wrestlers being demoted out of the division. The clearest example is, in fact, Teruyoshi from this last basho. Teru went 0-15. He got saddled with 15 ranks of demotion, which means he fed 15 wins or potential promotion ranks into everyone else. However, he can only drop 1 rank before he's out of the division entirely. Therefore, he essentially absorbs 14 demotion ranks in the same way a losing ozeki would. He quote-unquote earned 15 demotion ranks, only used 1, and the rest are useless relative to the Makuuchi division. The next factor is Kyujo losses below ozeki. These are, roughly, the next most common thing that impacts how wrestlers move relative to expectations. They have effectively the same impact as promotion ranks absorbed, but for a different reason. Whereas high-ranking wrestlers winning a lot causes others to lose, pushing them down mathematically and leaving room for them to bounce back up in the final rankings, Kyujo losses pull wrestlers down without anyone else gaining wins to counterbalance the losses. This means that every Kyujo loss is effectively a free rank available on the next Banzuke, which gives guys more chances to over-promote or reduce their demotions. Kyujos have been rather infrequent recently, but if 3 or 4 guys below ozeki go Kyujo for most or all of a basho, it can have a significant impact on the next Banzuke. Third is less common but potentially the most dramatic in effect, changes in the size of the sanyaku. Essentially, if a new slot is added to the sanyaku, adding a wrestler there and removing one from Maegashira, everybody in Maegashira moves up a half rank. This has a similar impact to promotion ranks being absorbed, with everyone getting a bonus bump up. Likewise, if someone is demoted out of the sanyaku without being replaced, everyone in Maegashira gets bumped down a half slot, similarly to when demotion ranks are absorbed. It doesn't matter that everyone's order relative to each other hasn't changed. When moving wrestlers around, ranks are considered by the ranks themselves, not relative to the rest of the division. The last factor is retirements in Maegashira. When someone in Maegashira retires, someone else has to move up into their position. That means everyone else moves up too, similarly to when someone is added to the sanyaku. The difference is that how many people benefit depends on the rank of the wrestler who retires. This can also apply to a komusubi or sekiwake who retires if they're in a base slot for the rank and someone has to move up to replace them, pulling up everyone else behind them. Alright, let's look at a real life example where everything goes fairly smoothly. Here's the Banzuke and final results from Haru 2017. It's worth noting that unused ranks keep adding up, so when you have more wrestlers at Yokozuna and Ozeki, and also Sekiwake with winning records, that takes more and more wins away from the guys lower down, which leaves more gaps and thus more potential bonus movement for them. And here, we have mostly strong performances from a lot of the guys at the top. As we can see, Hakuho and Goedo dropped out after early struggles, so they didn't give up too many wins to everyone else. We have 5 guys who killed it with double-digit performances, and then Tamawashi and Koroshogiku, who had winning records at Sekiwake, so they add into the pile of unused promotion ranks as well. So, if we add all their unused promotion ranks together, we get plus 40. Add in 2 more from Mitakeumi, since he went 9 and 6 at Komusubi and can theoretically rise 1 rank, and we're at plus 42. Next we look for Kyujos, since those are free ranks. Arawashi served up 2 and Kaisei had 5. We're not counting Chiyo at the bottom because his win-loss record by itself is enough to get him demoted. So that's 7, putting us at plus 49. We don't have any retirements, and no sanyaku slots were gained or lost. Shodai was demoted out of a base Komusubi slot, so he'll be replaced. Finally, we look for unused demotion ranks at the bottom to counterbalance what we have so far. Sadanoumi was 4 and 11, but could only drop 4.5 ranks before he left the division, so he has 2.5 unused demotion ranks. Likewise, if we consider Chiyo 3 and 8, he uses a rank and a half to leave the division and has 3.5 unused. Then we have Kyokushuho and Nishikigi with 3 and 4.5 unused respectively, for a total of 13.5 unused demotion ranks. Subtract that from the plus 49 we had before, and we have an expectation of about 35.5 ranks of positive bonus movement. If we show the next Banzuke for Natsu 2017, we see that's pretty close to what happened. Only 2 guys, Hokuto Fuji and Taka Keisho, received a worse rank than expected. Some others received the exact expected movement, but most of them were over-promoted or under-demoted, and 10 of them received 2 or more ranks of upward movement relative to expectation. In total, everyone who had been in Makuuchi and stayed there received 32 total ranks of positive movement relative to expectation. An obvious question here is, if the calculation was 35.5 extra ranks of movement, why was the outcome only 32? The fast answer is that because there are basically always guys being promoted in from Juryo, in order to do the math in such a way that we would find every promotion rank for every demotion rank, we would have to go through the entire Banzuke all the way down to Division 6. That's considerably more work than we need to do. It's enough to see the calculation and know it's approximately the amount of extra movement we should see once the Banzuke is finalized. Alright, now let's go back to our Kyushu 2019 example going into Hatsu 2020. This is the clusterfuck from part 2 of Learn the Banzuke. As you can see, we have fewer wrestlers from Sekiwake on up, and their performances weren't nearly as good as in the 2017 example, so it's easy to see right away that this will probably be messier, but we do the same steps in the same order. First, promotion ranks absorbed at the top. Hakuho was plus 13 and Taka Keisho plus 3. Kakuryu and Goedo gave up a total of 3 wins before going Kyujo, so that's minus 3, and Takayasu was 3 and 5 before he dropped out, so that's minus 2. The Sekiwake both had losing records, so they don't count here. This gives us a total of plus 11 at the top. At Komusubi, Asanoyama was plus 7 and Abi plus 3. Since each of them could theoretically move up 1 rank to Sekiwake, we know they have 6 and 2 promotion ranks they can't use, so they're plus 8. Now we have a total of plus 19. We We look for Kyujo ranks next. There are a ton of these, and they were something of a saving grace for the Banzuke committee. Tochinoshin had 10. Once we moved Tomokaze down 3 ranks to account for his actual losses, he still has 10 more Kyujo losses which kick in before he's out of the division. Ichino-jo was Kyujo for the whole Basho, but he only gave up 4.5 ranks before he was dropped. That gives us 24.5 Kyujo ranks for a combined 43.5 unused promotion ranks. So if there are that many ranks freely available for guys to jump back up into, how did things go so sideways? This is where demotions out of the sanyaku come into play. In Kyushu 2019, they had 11 sanyaku wrestlers. Mitakeumi and Tochinoshin were demoted from Sekiwake back to Maegashira. Takayasu was demoted from Ozeki, so he took one of those Sekiwake slots. Endo and Hokuto Fuji were also demoted from Komusubi back to Maegashira, and Asano Yama took the other Sekiwake slot, which meant that 4 wrestlers left the sanyaku, Mita, Tochi, Endo, and Hokuto, and only one, Daisho, was elevated in response. Each guy demoted from the sanyaku who wasn't replaced pushed the other 31 wrestlers in Maegashira down 1 slot, which means each of those demotions caused negative 15.5 ranks of movement. Multiplied by 3, that's minus 46.5, which immediately negates all the positive movement built up by the Yokozuna and Ozeki and the Kyujo wrestlers and puts us at a balance of minus 3. From there, we still need to go to the bottom and look at the demotion ranks absorbed. Nishikigi used 2 of his 7 demotion ranks, so he had 5 left over. Daishomaru had 3.5 unused, and Daishoho had 8. Very unusually, Wakataka Kage actually added positive ranks from the bottom. He went 4 and 1, but was demoted due to going Kyujo after that, so that left 3 promotion ranks unused. Still, those 4 combined for negative 13.5 ranks of movement. In sum then, we finish with minus 16.5 ranks of movement relative to expectation. This wound up being very close to what happened. A handful of guys got a small half-rank bump, and Tochinoshin was saved from the full extent of his demotion by 4 ranks, but overall there were 18 ranks of downward movement relative to expectation. This was largely centered in mid to low Maegashira. The wrestlers who finished from Maegashira 9 to 14 lost 20 ranks relative to expectation. Above them the situation wasn't great, but it was mostly pretty balanced. So we can see that what we calculate as the expected extra movement from one Banzuke to the next is close to what we end up with. What then is the expected extra movement heading out of Kyushu 2022? Yeah, it's kinda bad. How the hell is this possible though? Well, let's calculate it the same way. Promotion ranks absorbed. Takakeisho plus 9, Shodai minus 3, Wakataka Kage plus 1, Hoshoryu plus 7. That's a total of plus 14. There's nothing at Komusubi, 3 of them had losing records, and Kiri's 8 and 7 doesn't add anything. Since Takayasu and Kotonowaka at Maegashira 1 can rise a maximum of 2 ranks, Takayasu has 7 unused promotion ranks and Kotonowaka has 1. That's 8, putting us at a total of plus 22. Kyujo ranks, none. Chiotaryu counts for retirement ranks. I realize that in this case it would add up the same way, but that's not always going to be true, so it's best to standardize listing mid-basho retirements under retirements. So, retirement ranks. Chiotaryu creates 4.5 positive ranks, putting us at plus 26.5. Sanyaku demotions. If we assume recent precedent holds regarding who gets demoted and promoted, then Mita, Tamawashi, Tobizaru, and Daisho all leave the Sanyaku, while only Takayasu joins. That means 3 guys are leaving without being replaced. With 32 Maegashira wrestlers, each one accounts for negative 16 ranks of movement for a total of negative 48. Taking that away from the plus 26.5 we had, we're now at minus 21.5. That's already worse than Kyushu 2019, and we still haven't looked at the bottom of the division. First, Chiotaryu was 2 and 6 before going Kyujo. Thus, even though he created 4.5 ranks of positive movement with his retirement, he also has 4 ranks of unused demotion power because he's not being demoted, he's just leaving. Atami Fuji has 5.5 unused demotion ranks, and as mentioned earlier, Terutsuyoshi has 14 unused demotion ranks. That's another 23.5, which brings us to our total of minus 45. Now, if we look at where everyone calculates to, even without trying to put them in place, we can already see it's going to be an unmitigated disaster. The loss of those Sanyaku ranks means we have all these wrestlers who calculate into the 7 remaining Sanyaku ranks, or Maegashira 1 through 3. That's 13 slots for 19 guys. This many wrestlers stretches down through Maegashira 6, which brings Hokuto Fuji and Nishikigi into the mix, and once you take them and push down to Maegashira 7, now Myogiryu comes into play. It's not even a matter of over-demoting more guys. None of this includes Ura or Ichino-jo, who, apart from 7 and 8 Hokuto Fuji, were the only Maegashira wrestlers in the top 6 ranks with losing records. So somehow you have to make this work without demoting guys that have winning records or absolutely bludgeoning the sanyaku demotees. Through conversation with other Banzuke nerds, it's generally felt that the committee will keep another sanyaku slot open. If they try to make this work with only 7 sanyaku, the number of previously unthinkable decisions they'll have to make may lead to a suicide pact amongst the committee members. 8 sanyaku still makes for a pretty ugly situation, but as you can see, the situation does lighten up a bit before turning bad again around Maegashira 10 and 11. So, with 8, you may end up with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 uniquely bad outcomes, but the general ugliness of the downward rank pressure will apply across the whole division. They could go with 9, and then it only sucks a little bit for a lot of guys rather than sucking a bunch for almost all of them, but then they would have to spend more money, and are they going to do that if they don't absolutely have to? So no matter how this Banzuke gets sorted out, we're looking at all our favorite wrestlers either getting a little screwed if we're lucky, or a lot screwed if the committee decides everyone can suck it up and deal. Either way, I hope it's clear now why most of us are absolutely going to hate the next Banzuke. Have a great day, probably by not thinking about this too much, and I'll see you soon.